Okay, well, welcome to the Stump, where I cover various forestry issues, career and personal development, and really anything else on my mind. I'm your host, Matt Comiskey, and today we have Steve Courtney with us. He's currently with the Beck Group, and then are you still with Sodia as well?
Nope, that
Nope.
ended at the end of the year.
Okay, so Steve does have an extensive resume working in the forest products sector here in the Pacific Northwest, and I think everyone will enjoy this episode. And so, welcome, Steve. I'm glad you could join us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I think we'll just get started here. Maybe kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself, your career in the forest products sector. I know you've done association work, you've been in log procurement. Now you're kind of more in the business, I guess, development and analysis phase. So, all sorts of good, interesting things.
Yeah, well, I'm a native of Eastern Oregon and went to OSU and got a forest engineering degree and came out of college in 1992, which, as you know, was not the best time to try to find a job in the industry.
No, I came out in 91 with a forest engineering degree from the UW. And yeah, there was like one job available.
Yeah, so I took a temporary position in Newport, Washington with Plum Creek for 6 weeks. And then you mentioned association work. My first full-time job, the industry in Grant and Harney County in Eastern Oregon were forming Malheur Timber Operators, which was an industry association with 5 mills and the associated loggers and other associated businesses that depended on them. And so I was the first executive director of Malheur Timber Operators for a couple of years. And then I went to Malheur Lumber. Um, Worked there buying logs and managing ground for 10 years, which was one of the funnest jobs I've had because you were in the woods most of the time and enjoyed the forests of Eastern Oregon and running around the West buying logs. So that was a good time. Learned a lot there, good people to work with. So
And I assume that's kind of where you cross paths, or maybe it was with the executive director position with Tom Parton.
yeah, Tom was the secretary treasurer of Malheur Timber Operators, and then he was the manager at Malheur Lumber. So yeah, I worked for him when I went to that role, which was, as you know, it's good working with Tom.
Oh, it is great, and I was fortunate. Of course, he's the one who hired me into AFRC, my day job, and I still get to travel around the state of Washington with Tom. So it's another vast wealth of experience and information.
Yes. Yeah. So in 2004, I left my home of Eastern Oregon and joined Sierra Pacific Industries in Bernie, California, and was there for a year and a half until they built the new mill, which was a new mill then anyway, in Burlington, Washington, which was a great decision on my part, and hopefully they felt the same way. But it was a great experience. There's a lot of things. It didn't realize how sheltered I was in Eastern Oregon until particularly I got to Burlington, because there's a lot of things moving in the market and there was a lot of players, more than there are today, unfortunately. But it was a great learning experience. SPI has a great culture, and so that was a fun opportunity. And then in 2010, I had the opportunity to become the general manager for wood procurement for Interfor's Northwest Mills, which they had 2 in Washington and a couple in Oregon at that time. And so that was good. Get to build a team at Interfor and kind of set the procurement group in motion, and great experience. It's great to see some of the people that you worked with develop through that organization, and it was good people at Interfor. We had a good team and we were pretty successful, I think, in that group. So that was fun. And then in 2018, I went to work for Roseburg Forest Products, which my wife appreciated because I wasn't traveling all over the Northwest anymore. I was at home more, and appreciated that opportunity because I got to learn more about plywood and other things that I hadn't been involved with. So worked there for 3 years, and then when that position ran out, I came to work at the Beck Group.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's it seems like a fairly common trajectory, not necessarily the positions, but for so many folks that I run into the industry of bouncing around, getting a whole gob of different types of experiences. But I think you're a perfect example, though, of I'd say almost kind of the family like nature of this industry. Because I mean, no matter where I go, everybody knows who Steve Courtney is. And it's been fun getting to know you over the years, and actually, learning from you. That's kind of the one weird thing about association work, I guess, is, I feel like at times I've got 60 or 70 bosses, but that also means I have 60 or 70 people I get to learn from. So makes things pretty fascinating. But so let's transition to the Beck Group, because I myself probably lived a very sheltered life within the forest products industry of bouncing between some a large landowner, and then being a contractor consultant, and then working for the state. And I didn't even really know who the Beck Group was until I came to AFRC, started learning a little bit more. And now it seems like I run into the Beck Group almost every place I go.
Well, that's probably good from our standpoint, but yeah. So the Beck Group was founded over 40 years ago when there were a lot more small business mills around, and the Beck Group did a lot of consulting work for them to help their businesses out and do capital planning and all of the kind of things that were necessary that maybe smaller companies didn't have the expertise in house. And where I got to know them originally was benchmarking. We do a lot of benchmarking, so we understand the costs of mills, and we can participants in the benchmark can understand how they are performing versus other folks in the industry, and we still do that quite a bit. We have a significant benchmarking program for the South ongoing. And we do due diligence for people that are, mergers and acquisitions, things like that. Do a lot of supply studies, and we get involved in legal cases and feasibility studies. And we have clients that are public, private, nonprofit entities, tribes. We work for a whole range of folks to do a variety of things in the wood products business.
So have you found recently, or I don't know, maybe with the advent of how much information's available on the internet, that it's easier or more challenging to do some of that work? Because I know, I in my role, every once in a while I have people reach out to me and they want to do some kind of log, supply study analysis for whatever venture they're thinking about doing. And I'm always like, well, there's consultants that do that, and there's the internet. But especially for a lot of these smaller companies, like you said, that may not have the staff, you guys play a critical role. But I assume your relationships allow you to dig deeper than just what the internet may provide you.
Yeah, and you talk about people that have ideas that they may read a story on the internet and say, "Oh, this sounds like a great idea," but the depth of what you find on the internet, doesn't give you the whole story, I guess. And so we're able to provide the details behind that and do feasibility studies, et cetera, and make sure that their idea is going to work. And we get a lot of requests of feasibility studies, particularly around the West, where there's not any manufacturing anymore, and people are trying to do something with the wood that is available, particularly as the Forest Service tries to do restoration work, et cetera. And sometimes you have to burst their bubble a little bit, that the technology that they want to try and use to solve their problem hasn't been tested commercially or hasn't been successful commercially in a lot of cases. So you have to kind of temper their expectations a little bit.
I would imagine that is, do you find that challenging to have to maybe burst their bubble a little bit? I mean, I just, in the last, 4 or 5 years, it seems like, forestry is really cool again. Everybody wants to do everything with wood, except some folks don't like to cut trees. But I don't know how many times I've had to tell people, this isn't Field of Dreams. It's not like if you build this facility that these logs will just suddenly show up. But, what's it like to tell somebody, oh, by the way, your great idea you read about on the internet, you might go broke in the first 2 years.
Yeah. I really feel for the small rural communities around the West that, maybe they used to have a mill and they're trying to figure out something else to do as they manage their forests so their town doesn't burn up, those kind of things. And so if they have great expectations and you kind of have to temper those are the worst situations. But most often there is some sort of solution that we can come up with that may not be exactly what they had in mind when we started with, but there is, maybe other options that they can use depending on the area. So, but yeah, it's not any fun if somebody has high expectations and all these great ideas to get money and financing, either grants or private financing to get something done. And then like, well, you may want to make sure that that's going to be successful before you start.
I that's kind of, I would say my biggest challenge too, is that, a lot of just my regular day-to-day work, I end up dealing with small rural communities that, like you said, have lost their manufacturing sector due to policy changes and decisions over the years. And their biggest asset are the trees around them, but oftentimes that is also potentially one of the biggest liabilities, not to mention the geographic location. So
Yeah.
So you guys do that kind of work. Kind of what's your specific role, what you do with the Beck Group? Because clearly, you've got a lot of background in raw material acquisition, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, a lot of that raw material acquisition involved doing supply studies for various facilities, whether it was ones that we're currently operating, the company I was with, or ones that we were looking at. So you kind of see what was available over time. And now I'm using a lot of that at the Beck Group, whether it be logs or chips or biomass, people that are looking at businesses and, hey, if I decide to go down this road, do I have a supply? So I do a lot of that kind of thing. After years of sitting in production meetings with mill managers and things, I learned a few things about mills, and so I help out on mill audits and work around places that people are trying to improve their bottom line and get to go through various facilities, which that's been fun since I've been here. I like going to see new places and new mills, and so that's been good. And I end up with odds and end jobs that I didn't ever think about before, such as last year we completed a post and pull survey of companies that do that across the West, and that was interesting to see those folks. And it's just whatever I can do to stay busy.
All right. Well, that sounds really interesting and pretty cool. I don't know, it it's an area of the industry that I guess I'd never been exposed to up until a few years ago, and so it's been fun kind of learning more and reading some of the reports that your organization has done. Is always fascinating and helps kind of fill in some of the blank spots for me. But
There's some that are that we're working on now that you'll probably find interesting here and going to be coming out before long. So yeah.
okay. So I'm sure lots of people think that I'm probably nerds to go back and read different things, like wood fiber insulation and all sorts of crazy stuff. So, but let's shift maybe a little bit and talk about, especially with your experience and kind of what you're looking at now, what's kind of the challenges that you see maybe the industry facing both the near and long term?
Well, as you know, I've been worrying about log supply for most of my career, so I have to say that to start with. And you're probably as familiar with as anybody with the changes that are occurring in Oregon and Washington and the federal level and north of us in BC, which used to be an outlet for some of the mills in Western Washington, and there's still logs from BC that roll to Oregon and Washington, but not like it used to be, and changes there, reducing supply. And so I'm worried about how those changes are going to change our industry over the next few years, but we'll see. Our industry's always been resilient, so we'll see how that turns out. But along with that is that, you know, the US is a net importer of wood, and I kind of prefer that we do it in our backyard where we know how it's happening. And I'm a little worried about where wood's going to come from in the future if we're not doing it here and we're already importing wood. And
Yeah.
I don't think the expansion in the South is going to make up the difference.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really critical piece that I'm surprised at how many people don't understand is the fact that we have become a net importer of wood. And, you know, admittedly, a lot of it comes from Canada, but with what's going on in Canada, that hole's got to be filled someplace. And I agree. I'd much rather know where it's coming from in my backyard than, you know, from across some ocean that I have no idea what's been done to get it here. And you know,
And we're probably biased, but at least in my case, I prefer that I like to see Doug fir. I know what it is and the strengths and the things there. And if it's something from someplace else, you know, I don't have the familiarity or the comfort. So,
exactly. So kind of along that vein, assuming that those of us who work in the policy world can keep logs flowing for the existing industry, you know, and keep fires from burning them all up and all that good stuff. What kind of opportunities do you see for the forest products sector and the timber industry at large in, you know, particularly here Pacific Northwest, but really, you know, across the United States?
well, and you know, in your day job, your association has been doing a good job of letting everybody know about how renewable forest products are. And particularly with the concerns over carbon and climate change and things, why there's a lot of opportunities for wood products to be utilized in the place of steel and concrete. And I think that there's been some gains made there and that they will continue to move forward as people understand how to use, you know, mass timber and they like to build those kind of facilities that were typically more concrete and steel. And the other thing about it is that there's been a lot of change and research and people working on ways for wood to be used instead of, say, plastics and things like that. And so I'm really curious to see what's going to be made out of wood by the time, you know, our grandkids are adults. So, and hopefully that research continues.
Yeah, no, some of the stuff that's coming out for, you know, nanocellular technology and that kind of stuff. There's some interesting things that are, I mean, not that far off. I think the big challenge still seems to be supply and then the capital investment to get there, because a lot of that stuff is expensive to do, and energy intensive, unfortunately. But at least we're growing the fuel that can generate the energy to do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's unfortunate that a lot of attention gets paid to our industry now because of, you know, you mentioned wildfires and the destruction that's associated with those and people not wanting to, you know, inhale smoke all summer. But you know, that your association and others have been building upon that and say, hey, there's other things that we can do with wood and sustainable over the long term that's better for our climate. And so I think those are great opportunities for the future of our industry.
All right. Well, yeah, no, I would agree. As frustrating and cynical as I can get sometimes, just because of what I deal with day to day, and you know, the folks who want to not want to cut trees but think we should do everything with wood, which I always scratch my head about. I do think this industry, like you said, it's resilient, and I do think we have a pretty bright future. So, um, so I'd say you've been very successful in the industry and in your work. And I know, like, you have, I'm pretty sure you went and got your MBA at some point after getting your engineering degree. And I'd be honest with you, I kind of started the last about 2 weeks ago looking through, hi, I wonder what it'd take to go get an MBA. You know, lifelong learner here. But What's kind of one key thing that you think has helped you be successful in, your career, your work, where you're at today?
Well, probably the same with you. It's difficult to pick one thing, but when you start out and you don't know anything, one thing I knew I could do was put in the effort, right? And I didn't want to fail, so I made sure that I did the work so I didn't fail. And so make sure you get everything done and go above and beyond. So you earn people's respect and you know, they don't have to worry about you not getting things done. But it's also been helpful that I had good mentors along the way, people that have been in the industry a long time, and listening to them as I progressed through my career, so I didn't make the mistakes that they'd already learned from. That's been very helpful as well.
Yeah, and that, well, and I think that that mentor part, not only finding the mentors that you can interact with in the real world, but that's the one nice thing about today's technology. You can, I don't want to use the term lurker, sounds kind of weird, but I guess you can identify mentors at a distance, of whether it's through books, podcasts, those type of things. So I think that's really key. But I know one thing that you really excel at, and I've seen it as I've gone around, this industry, and like I said, every place I go, everybody knows who Steve is. How do you really see, relationships and building relationships as helping your success?
Well, as you know, this industry has a lot of great people. And if you treat them with respect and, you know, uh, acknowledge them and be honest with them in your business dealings and things, then they'll return the favor, and they're pretty easy to get along with as you work. As you know, if you mistreat somebody or lie or, even do something a little shady, while your reputation can be stained quickly, and it makes life difficult for doing business in this industry. And the industry is not very big, and the word spreads quickly. So just treating the folks with respect, developing those relationships is key, because you don't know, as we said, that the industry's small, and you don't know 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when you're going to run into that person again, or if they may be your boss or, the key supplier or anything like that. So it's just key to treat everybody properly.
Yeah, no, I think that is great advice. And that's one thing about this industry. For as big as it is, it's also very, very small. I think you're aware of, I won't name names, but some folks that I have had interactions with over the last couple of years, and it was fascinating as I was like trying to do my own kind of due diligence and kind of vetting the people to call up Tom Parton. And 20 years ago, 30 years ago, he had had an experience, and he's like, oh, don't, and I've had, or for example, just my own interview with AFRC, you were on my interview panel, but I happen to know that Kevin Arneson did a reference check on me on somebody that wasn't even on my reference list, that happened to be in my class, that worked for him for ag forestry. So yeah, you're right. It's very small, and um, good deeds tend to be rewarded and bad deeds tend to follow you.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that reference check thing, that's one of those, the industry's fairly small, and you may not know somebody yourself, but you know somebody that knows somebody. And so you can start finding things out when you run into somebody new. So yeah, you want to make sure that you keep the solid reputation.
oh yeah. And I mean, you never know. It's, there's a lobbyist down in Oregon who we were many years apart, but what are the odds that two kids graduate from a urban high school in South Seattle and both end up in forestry? and both end up working in venues where they actually cross paths at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Um, it's amazing how small that it is. Um, so there's been a lot of discussion lately around workforce development and how do we bring new people into this industry. And a lot of the people that I know have come from rural communities, come from families that have had ties to forestry. I'm kind of one of those anomalies that wasn't. But what kind of advice would you give somebody that might be looking at getting into it? Is there, I mean, obviously there's forestry degrees, and there's OSU and University of Idaho and all those type of things. But what's kind of maybe the insider baseball or the secret sauce somebody should be paying attention to?
Well, as you know, there's a lot of roles in the forestry and forest products world. And checking those roles out, doing some investigation to see all the different options that are available in this industry and those that may interest you and fit your talents. We talk about us as forest engineering, we probably ended up in that discipline because we like numbers, right? And so did I ever think I'd be in log procurement? Probably not, but there's a lot of numbers in log procurement and it worked out well for me over time. So and other people may like other options, whether it's buying and selling forest products, planting trees, managing land, roads, whatever it may be. There's a lot of disciplines in the forest products industry, and I would encourage people to understand them and don't be afraid to go try them. Sometimes that may mean that you have to move, but over the long haul, why it's good experience, and would encourage that you just keep all your options open to start with. Don't get too stuck in one discipline. The other thing that I would say is embrace change. People refer to this as an old industry and we are stuck in our ways, but change happens regularly in this industry. And some people don't deal with it very well, and other people's embrace it and use it to their advantage. And I would recommend the latter.
Yeah, no, that part right there, I think, is excellent advice. Um, and maybe at times, because this is an older industry, I know personally sometimes leads to a little bit of my own frustration, because I feel like sometimes we're still trying to do like PR sometimes with new tools, but with the same messages from 20 years ago. And it's like, we need to revamp that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you look at today's sawmills and the technology that's in there, the just the amount of changes, the stuff that I think is coming at us with a lot of the climate issues. Yeah, change is going to be the one constant, but there are lots of roles. I mean, how many? So I know several different log procurement people who have forest and engineering degrees. I think I also have known a couple that have had accounting degrees. So you may not necessarily have to have a forestry degree to succeed and make your way through the industry. It's more of showing up, and as you said earlier, having a good attitude.
Yeah. And yeah, being engaged, and a lot of people have sawdust in their veins from where they grew up, right? And to steal Roseberg's phrase, but folks, particularly from rural communities where there's been mills and other neighbors or their family were in the logging community, doesn't mean that you have to go out down and cut the trees down yourself, but there's a lot of ways to be involved in the industry. And some of them are highly skilled that are short in supply. And so it's pretty good job security over the long run.
Yeah, I'm guessing that if I called up almost every one of the local mills, that they would tell me that they have at least one open position for a millwright. And I'm sure a lot of kids coming out of high school and stuff that may not want to go to college are like, what's a millwright? But it's like, well, you know, it's there's welding positions, there's machinists, there's electrical, there's all sorts of opportunities out there. And or if you want to go into the kind of the more professional route, there's business, all that kind of stuff. And so there's, and then of course, what you and I deal with from time to time, there's all the lawyers we get to spend time with too. So having a little natural resource background with a bar number, it can be beneficial to your career as well.
Yeah, and through our career, they've been a lot more of them than there was when we started.
Yes, I would say unfortunately that seems to be true, but at some point, the good thing is the good ones are always helping and helping us move the process forward and keeping those jobs and maybe even recruiting some new infrastructure. So, well, so I think, is there anything else that you want to add or cover? Is there a good way if this, spawns somebody's brand new idea of, how to use wood that nobody else is using or create more value for wood that, somebody else is using. Yeah, I mean, anything else you want to, I mean, the sky's the limit for what you want to cover. But then, yeah, anything that you can share on how to contact you if folks have questions, if they want to hire the Beck Group. No affiliation here other than I know the people who work there and I know they do very good work based on the stuff I read. But yeah, so I'll just I'll leave it with that question.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a website, Beck Group Consulting. We get a lot of inquiries from people that just emailing info@beckgroupconsulting.com and asking questions and uh, want to discuss ideas with us. And so that's a great way. And all of us at the Beck Group are there that you can contact us individually. So appreciate you asking. And the only other thing that I would add is thank you for your work and your help to keep this industry moving along. You do a great job and we all appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. And yeah, thank you. It is, I never would have dreamed that this engineer would end up in the policy world, but it is a labor of love and passion, I will have to say. So it is very good. And one thing I just kind of thought about though with the Beck Group, with this kind of spawning new ideas, being open to change, that kind of stuff. You guys do like work around, like the USDA Forest Service has these wood innovation grants and stuff. So do you guys work with potential applicants, help them through that process, or
Yeah.
um
Yes. We have, it's not necessarily a discipline that I'm in, but there are other folks in our office and knock on wood, they've been fairly successful to date. And helping people apply for those grants and get the money to expand their business or help it. So yeah.
okay, so yeah, so if we got any listeners out there who have, like I said, have that next great idea or already have an idea, or maybe it's just an old idea that needs some tweaking to make it successful and they're looking for some grant money, there's you could be a resource for finding folks to help do the work and prepare the grants rather than hiring a professional grant writer that knows nothing about forestry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the benefit of having us at the Beck Group is that we understand some of those things. A lot of existing businesses want help in expanding their business or improving it, and a lot of those grants go to those as well as folks like you say that have a new idea. So yeah, there's folks at the Beck Group that can help.
Well, cool. Well, hey, I will make sure that we put in the show notes the link to get to the Beck Group's website, and I know they can find your email and some of your other colleagues' email addresses there. Um, and I'll ask the silly question: do you do Twitter or anything like that, or that folks should go follow you or the Beck Group on or Facebook or?
The Beck Group is X, right? The
Oh
X
yes, X.
primarily LinkedIn. We do a lot of our communication through LinkedIn, and you'll find us all there. And we're actually exploring other uh, options that we may want to be involved in, but that's where we are today.
Okay. Do you guys use Substack at all? I just started playing with that.
Oh,
So
really? Well, I'll have to investigate it because we're not using it currently.
yeah, it's an interesting platform, and I think a lot more maybe a lot more useful for X. So I have a hard time remembering the whole X, formerly known as Twitter. Just it reminds me of like, an old 80s performer called, maybe the artist formerly known as Prince is just kind of,
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
it seems kind of weird, but well, hey
No,
Steve.
I understand, especially since, it's not something that I'm on every day. I have trouble remembering it as well.
Yeah. So, well, hey, thank you. It's been great having this conversation, and I know we could have gone on for much longer time, but I want to try kind of a little bit of a shorter format and see how that goes for the listeners. And it's the good thing is I know how to track you down. So, the next time we want to have some kind of another conversation, maybe go a little more in depth or talk about the latest and greatest business you guys have helped launch or something, we can do that. So,
Well, I appreciate you asking me to be here and look forward to the next one.
all righty. Well, thank you. And yeah, we'll look forward to checking in with you. And like I said, hopefully we'll run into each other. It is a small industry.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Have a great day.
All right, you too.